Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public input meeting for Baltimore County's Department of Public Works and Transportation's Draft Transit Development Plan. I'm Mandy Remmel, your host and Deputy Director for the County Executive's Office of Community Engagement. Tonight's public input meeting is being held to ensure community members receive an opportunity to share their feedback regarding the Draft Transit Development Plan for Baltimore County. Thank you to those of you who have submitted your feedback in advance and during the Draft Transit Development Plan presentation, which will begin in a few moments. You may continue to submit your questions in the comment section of the WebEx. Questions will be answered after the Director of Public Works and Transportation, Ms. DeAndrea Walker's presentation has concluded. Before we begin with the Draft Transit Development Plan presentation, we would like to kick off tonight's meeting with a message from a special guest. Without further ado, it is my honor and privilege to introduce to you Baltimore County Executive John Olszewski, Jr.
Well, thanks, Mandy, and good evening to everyone. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join us for tonight's public input meeting on our transit development plan here in Baltimore County. We are excited to have you share your ideas and questions with us. We're excited to share details about the plans to improve transit in our county. And I want to thank everyone who's already submitted some information. Tonight, you're going to be hearing from DeAndrea Walker, who is our Acting Director of Public Works and Transportation. I'm also thrilled to be joined by Sam Sneed, our Transportation Planner, Mandy, Jasmine Clements, and Elizabeth Sachs from our Government Reform and Strategic Initiatives Office. We're all here because we want to present our Transit Development Plan that will be given to you by Acting Director Walker. And that plan aligns with our broader vision for transportation and the work we're already doing here in Baltimore County. From day one, this has been an administration that has been committed to improving transit options across Baltimore County. We know that we are a jurisdiction that continues to grow, and our transportation infrastructure has to grow with it. We need more transportation options, and we need better ones too. We're looking to create east-west connectivity also, so our residents can get around better. We want to fill the first and last mile gaps in connectivity to better connect people to their jobs and to improve our quality of life. And we're working actively to make walkable, bikeable communities so it's easy to choose more sustainable, healthy transportation options. Delivering on that vision has required transformational change in how we operate in Baltimore County. Over the last 3 years, we've reimagined our county's approach to transportation. And we've put a much greater emphasis on transit and multimodal transportation than we've ever done before. This is a shift that's now reflected literally in the name of our department, now officially known as the Department of Public Works and Transportation. It's also seen in the structure of the agency. In our first year in office, we created the county's first transportation bureau within DPW, along with new positions to support our focus on transportation. And I want to again recognize DeAndrea, who previously served as Deputy Director for Transportation, for her leadership in transforming that critical agency. I'm proud of the progress we've made so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of the fruits of our labor in the years ahead. Just one example of that work is the Towson Loop, which began this fall, providing free localized public transportation to core destinations in Towson. We have 2 service routes on the Towson Loop. It's the orange line, which is east to west, and the purple line, north to south. These routes are integrated with existing transit, including a shared bus stop with MTA and Towson University. And I'm really proud of the work of our team for jumpstarting this long-awaited projects, including DeAndrea, Acting Deputy Director Russell, and so many others. I look forward to replicating this project in communities across Baltimore County in the years ahead. Because before the start of the loop, our only locally operated transit service was County Ride. Now, this is a great service. It's a low fee of $3. It provides our seniors and people with disabilities and rural residents scheduled trips to essential stops, the doctor, the grocery store, and more. So we are working to expand and also improve our existing County Ride services. We remain proud of this unique service and look forward to doing more for all of our residents. Previous transit plans were primarily focused on County Ride, though. This is an updated plan tonight that goes beyond County Ride and includes recommendations on how to replicate services like the Loop in communities across Baltimore County. It's in sync with the state's regional transit plan for Central Maryland. This TDP aims to improve mobility for our residents and improve the first and last mile transit issues. So this is a plan that recommends short and long-term improvements that DeAndrea will go in greater detail on, but everything about expanding hours and service for County Ride, a loop service in Owings Mills, on-demand microtransit, and crosstown bus routes. So looking forward to having DeAndrea give that full presentation, because we're all really excited about the opportunities we have to build a much more innovative transit system here in Baltimore County. We look forward to your feedback again and working with you to accomplish these goals. And so with that, it is my pleasure to introduce someone who's doing great work on behalf of residents of Baltimore County, Acting Director DeAndrea Walker, for our presentation tonight on the updated transit development plan. Director Walker.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Good afternoon and welcome. As the County Executive said, I'm DeAndrea Walker. I'm the Acting Director for DPW&T here in Baltimore County. And we appreciate that you all have taken time out of your busy schedules to learn about our transit development plan, to participate in the process, and to understand the goals of our committee. Transit and transportation are important in Baltimore County and to our county executive. Hence, he insisted that we have this meeting to inform you about the future of transportation, because the residents of Baltimore County deserve transparency, as he said many times, access to developments, and they need to know how we are addressing the challenges of an expanded population with growing congestion. We need to know where we are going, what's our vision of transit and transportation, and how we intend to get there. That's the plan, and that's the point of this meeting. Baltimore County periodically produces a transportation plan which projects where we want to be and how we want to get there. Every transit system in Maryland does the same thing. The Maryland Department of Transportation specifically requires locally operated transit systems in Maryland to provide a transit development plan every 5 years. These plans then serve as the basis for preparing our annual grant applications for transit funding. Slide 2. Slide 2. Give me 1 second. I think Sam's maybe having trouble moving to slide 2. Sam, are you there?
Yes, this is slide 2. Do you want me to be on slide 3 or back to 2?
Okay, so we'll stay here. The Baltimore County Plan builds upon the county's goals and objectives for transit. Reviews and assesses current transit services, identifies transit needs, and develops an appropriate course of action to address the objectives in the short-range future. While previous TDPs focused primarily on services provided through County Ride, this draft plan represents a greater emphasis on a broader public transit in Baltimore County. As a result, our recommendations go beyond County Ride services and include strategies for expanding locally operated transit and on-demand microtransit services. The complete plan for Baltimore County can then serve as a guide for making organizational changes, improvements, and/or potential expansions over the next 5 years. How do we begin? What do people need? We begin by assessing county and community needs. First, our assessment includes a rider survey to get feedback on County Ride services from customers. Because of COVID-19, the survey was conducted by County Ride staff through the mail this year. Incidentally, there are 12,403 customers in our County Ride database. Next, we conduct a community survey to identify ways to expand locally operated transit services. This community survey in particular was distributed online through the county's website. We also use the expertise of our ongoing advisory committee, representing both government agencies, stakeholders as well. We also do interviews with community stakeholders from business, healthcare, and human service perspectives. And finally, we also went to our frontline county ride drivers and operational staff. The assessment incorporated needs that included in other plans, such as the Central Maryland Regional Transit Plan, that identified inadequate connections in Baltimore County, as well as areas where connections were non-existent. Through the rider survey, 738 county ride customers provided their input as part of the needs assessment. This gave customers an opportunity to go on the record and suggest improvements to county ride. Improvements that would expand service availability, convenience were most mentioned. These included expanded service hours, expanded week service, increased capacity, and shorter time frames for making reservations. In addition, through a broader community survey, Baltimore County residents shared their opinions. Respondents who did not use public transportation were asked if there were specific factors that would encourage them to use transit. Overall, the top answers were similar. People indicated that they would consider public transit if service was convenient and safe. In particular, they would consider public transit if it served the places they needed to access and if the wait time was minimal. And they also expressed interest in on-demand services, which was similar to Uber and Lyft, through which they could access rides through their smartphones. Based on the surveys, as well as the stakeholder information, we identified basic overall needs that the residents wanted. Expanded transportation services, in particular to access employment opportunities, first mile, last mile connections that provided access to the existing transit network, more reliable and on-time transportation services, particularly in our paratransit service. As most of you all know, the paratransit service is our door-to-door service for elderly and disabled. Local and community-based services, as well as flexible services that keep travel times to a minimum. From this, we got 4 service improvement areas. Based on the review of current transit services in Baltimore County, the analysis of current and future demographics and input from customers, residents, and other stakeholders, these 4 potential service improvements categories were identified. Expanded county ride services, Monday through Friday from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., and implementing county ride services on Saturday between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Implementing a new circulator service in the Owens Mills area, similar to that one that we just started in Towson. Implementing an on-demand microtransit service. This basically means on-demand tech-enabled transportation, where you can use your phone to call the bus to come and pick you up from point A to point B. Our microtransit service, which is a niche between traditional fixed route service and ride-hailing technology. In specific, communities wanted microtransit service that will provide local mobility and connections to existing MDOT MTA routes. And they also wanted crosstown services that would connect county communities from point A to point B. So, how do we proceed? Recognizing that not all service improvements can happen at once, the plan provides a phasing approach that will be dependent on future funding. Short-term improvements could involve the Owens Mills on-demand microtransit service and expansion of county ride services on Saturdays. Midterm improvements could include implementation of on-demand microtransit services in additional Baltimore County communities and expanded county ride evening services. Some of the long-term improvements could include implementation of the Owens Mills Circulator Service and the Community Connector Services, where you get from one community in Baltimore County to the next. Baltimore County develops an annual grant application for MDOT-MTA that includes operating and capital grant programs. This grant application has to be approved by the county each year. Maryland's transit program combines available federal and state funds to provide local assistance, and the allocation to the various localities is not strictly formula driven. Therefore, any estimate for the amount of grant funding available to Baltimore County is somewhat spectacular. It's somewhat a guess. However, the Transit Development Plan serves an important role in MDOT-MTA's annual process for reviewing grant applications. Typically, the projects proposed in a county's annual grant application must have been identified in the TDP in order to receive the funding. Hence the importance behind us doing our TDP every 5 years. It sets us up to be able to possibly get grants from the state and federal government as we move through our plan. With that said, this table provides a conceptual budget that is included in the TDP and is based on what is known at the current time. Final costs and funding sources will be identified through the annual grant application process and future detailed service planning. However, this financial plan provides a blueprint for the future discussions on improving public transportation in Baltimore County and the potential costs to implement these improvements. Again, it should be noted that this budget is conceptual and is somewhat speculative. Ultimately, implementation of any new and expanded service will be based on additional community input, detailed service planning, and funding availability. The Transit Development Plan represents a big effort by many people who have helped craft an idea, working together, asking good questions, and sending us in a creative direction. I'd like to thank the committee from Baltimore County specifically that helped us pull this transit development plan together. Sam Sneed, Laura Riley, Dana Brown, Elizabeth Sachs, Michelle Still, Jesse Bellick, and Jasmine Clemens, and Chris Taylor from MTA, who provided assistance from MDOT-MTA, as well as Dan Dalton from KFH, who also provided assistance. This is a bold plan, and I believe a good one. It tells us what you think and how we should get there. In addition, I've added here my contact information and our email box, where we want to give you more opportunity to provide feedback on the TDP. We will have the TDP on our website for the next 2 weeks, providing an option for you all to continue to give us feedback before we make this draft plan a final. The comments will be taken under consideration through December 15th, and we appreciate you taking time tonight to review the 200 and some odd page document and give us continued feedback. With that, Mr. County Executive, I'll turn it back over to you.
Deandra, thanks for that detailed presentation. We are excited to, I believe, open the floor up at this point to our residents to any questions or feedback they have. I know that Mandy's already put in the chat box that if you had any questions or feedback, you can put it in the chat. And I don't know, Mandy, if we also have the possibility to let folks, if they want to be unmuted or brought in to ask a question as well, we can certainly do that if folks just want to let us know. But at this point, we're happy to turn things back over to our moderator, Ms. Remmel, and to all of you if you have any questions or feedback.
Wonderful. Thank you. I do. We have received some pre-submitted questions, so we will go ahead and start there. And then if you would like to continue to drop your questions in the chat, we will take them from there. And then I believe if Jasmine has an opportunity to open the floor, we will do that as well too. So I'll go ahead and start first, Director Walker, with a question and some feedback that came in. This is from a Mr. Sean Meyer in Dundalk, who states, as a father of 2 young adults who have worked at Trade Point Atlantic, he has some very specific concerns, or very specific feedback towards the lack of easily accessible and frequent transit to and from the work locations from the areas throughout Dundalk, Essex, and Middle River. He believes that there should be more transit to and from TPA, that most of the transit is coming from Baltimore City, and it does not take into account the many folks who live near TPA on the east side of the county. He says, I'm glad to see that you are looking at providing microtransit to fulfill this need, but he would say that he could see us doing more with microtransit. He says, I would like to propose to you to work with employees at TPA to subsidize circulator services throughout Eastern Baltimore County. These circulator services should provide an inexpensive and frequent service to and from TPA from areas such as North Point Village and the North Point Boulevard Corridor, Old Dundalk, Essex, and more. He said Baltimore County has provided enough transportation throughout other parts of the county, and he would like to see this microtransit right in his community and to and from TPA.
Thank you, Mandy. Mr. Dolan, we appreciate your comments that you've submitted today, and I agree that we can provide more transit service in the TPA area. We are looking actively at the TPA area in terms of providing more transit services. As a matter of fact, Sam Sneed, who's on this call, worked directly with MTA to provide some additional service that I believe started this past July in the TPA area. But I hear you loud and clear about from the communities within the area, the Dundalk, Essex, and Middle River area, providing some more microtransit type connected services in the area. I hear you and I appreciate your comments, and we are actively looking at that and having conversations with TPA about how we could facilitate something like that in the near future. I believe that was one of the midterm recommendations.
Wonderful, thank you. I have another question from Miss Nora Smith from Phoenix, Maryland. She writes, currently county ride service is available to riders twice a week. There are residents who utilize county ride and need it more frequently for medical appointments such as hemodialysis. I'd like to request that county ride be increased to 3 times a week use in the TDP.
Ms. Smith, that is a great recommendation, and it was more of a short-term recommendation. We are looking at county ride. One of the things that we were doing was waiting for new software that has been procured and implemented. So we do expect to be able to take more appointments and increase the appointments for the county ride services probably the first of the year. I definitely agree. Most times when you do dialysis services, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So I definitely understand. We have looked at that as an option, and we think we may be able to deliver that recommendation sooner than later. Hopefully the first of the year, opening up the appointments to 3 times a week versus 2 times a week.
Wonderful. This one is from Shannon in Randallstown, and she asks, do you plan to eventually charge for the loop services as you add more microtransit around the county?
Well, transportation service, one thing about transportation services is that it's not cheap, but allowing us planning in advance by doing the TDP, the Transit Development Plan, allows us the opportunity to go for grants. It allows us the opportunity to ask for money from the state. So we're going to continue to try to facilitate those processes so we don't have to charge. But I will say transportation is not, it's not a cheap service to provide. So as best we can, we will continue to do that and advocate for a free service.
Wonderful, thank you. And I will have one more here pre-submitted, and then we can have Jasmine open it up for anyone to unmute as well. So this question / feedback came from the Vice President of the Rockaway Beach Improvement Association, which represents residents and property owners of Cape May, Turkey Point Peninsulas in the Essex area of Eastern Baltimore County. They state, having recently reviewed the draft TDP, our community wishes to express our opposition to the creation of microtransit service in the Essex area of Eastern Baltimore County. It is our belief that offering services such services is unnecessary and does not serve the true need of the community. After our review of the data presented, we assert that the data does not support the county's proposal for microtransit in Essex, as the area does not rely heavily on public transit. We would like to respectfully request that the creation of microtransit in Essex be eliminated from the proposed plan. However, in the alternative, if that is not something that is feasible, we would ask that the coverage area be amended to remove the Middleborough Peninsula and any areas between Middleborough Road and east of MD 702.
We appreciate your feedback. I will say that the TDP, the Transit Development Plan, is just the beginning of looking at the feasibility of transit in different communities. There's a more in-depth process that we have to do in order to make sure that it actually works for the community and the connections are actually there. But we appreciate the feedback, and we will definitely take it into consideration as we continue to look to expand service within Baltimore County.
Wonderful.
And DeAndrea, sorry, real quickly, I think it might be helpful though for anyone that is tuned in or watching the recording later, if you could explain microtransit to the residents. A lot of people don't know what that is, and I think we've talked about it at a high level. So I think that if we could take this time to explain it a little bit, so that way everyone understands what the TDP is recommending.
Sure. Thank you, Jasmine, for that. So microtransit is a service in which you can basically solicit transit service from your smartphone. We have a geocoded area. So what will happen is, let's say, let's just use Catonsville. We typically have the service in a 3 to 5 mile area. And if you're in that geocoded area during the certain times of the day, you can use your smartphone to say, I'd like to be picked up from this particular hub, and then go to this hub. So it's not a direct, it's not a circulator where the fixed route service is going in a circle, the same fixed route services all day long. It's actually, you can actually call the service to come and pick you up at a particular time to get to another destination within that geocoded space.
And just to add on, those trips can be grouped. So if multiple people are going from one location to the other, they can all utilize the same vehicle within that 3 to 5 mile radius. It's also less obtrusive, typically a smaller size set of vehicles within the 3 to 5 mile radius.
Wonderful. I think we can go ahead and open up the floor. Jasmine does have the capability to unmute some people. So if you can unmute and ask the question directly if you would like to our attendees. We'll give you a moment to do so here.
Well, actually, Mandy, just to clarify, if anyone would like to ask a question, they need to let me know in the chat and I will unmute them. And then they'll have the chance to speak. So we'll just give it a minute or two for anyone to reply. And if not, we can, end the meeting early.
Steve, you are not the only one here. We do have
No.
quite a few attendees tonight. So I want to thank, as we're waiting to just give folks one last chance before we wrap, I do want to just thank everyone for your presence and your interest in this work. A lot of time has gone into it from both our department and our partners, Dan and his team, so many others, and really appreciate folks being here, for being involved, providing feedback on this proposed plan. But again, as we always do, we try to engage the public in the work before we start embarking upon it. So really appreciate the interest and your time here tonight.
And I do believe that Steve would like to speak. You should be unmuted now, Steve.
All right, good. So everyone can hear me, I assume? Cool. So yeah, my name is Steve Gladstone. I'm in the White Marsh area off of Campbell Boulevard and White Marsh Boulevard. So I had a question about potentially service that would be happening in the White Marsh Middle River area. Because MTA service goes up to the mall, it goes down Eastern Boulevard. There's not a whole lot in the middle there. And it seems like there's a lot of business development going on, especially with the Baltimore Crossroads project and other projects going on between Campbell Boulevard and Eastern Boulevard. So I was wondering if you guys had thought about those as potential job centers that could be ripe for transit or microtransit or anything like that.
Mr. Gladstone, thank you for your question. I believe one of the midterm recommendations was microtransit in the Middle River area.
Sam, do you want to go back to that budget slide? There you go.
Yes, it was. One of our midterm recommendations was Trade Point Crosstown, was the Trade Point Crosstown route. And we also have Essex Middle River microtransit service recommendation as a midterm.
But Steve, this is helpful feedback as we sort of think about building these out. To the extent we end up doing any of these services, understanding the areas of need is very helpful, and precisely why we are having this meeting tonight.
Mm-hmm.
No, for sure. Yeah, because I'm also thinking that with Campbell Boulevard, actually, I believe there's also a project that's going to connect it through. So you'll be able to go from White Marsh Boulevard all the way over to Honeygo without having to go up to the main intersection there, White Marsh and Honeygo,
right.
which would be good, and potentially open up a lot of other traffic and people to be able to get to those jobs a little bit easier. So that was something I was thinking about. And also, if I might ask, there seem to be other projects going on in the area that are not really transit focused. Like there's talk about actually putting new gas station right next to the Royal Farms on White Marsh Boulevard. So they have two gas stations right next to each other, as if to promote more heavy car traffic in the area versus transit and microtransit options. I just wasn't sure if the county was thinking that this is balanced enough or if they wanted to focus more on the transportation and transit side.
Well, Steve, we have a mixed community. So even though we are providing transportation options, we definitely try to have a balance. Our development plans come through PAI. However, we do look at them and we talk about the traffic on the roads and what other transit options we can provide there. But that doesn't take into account if a developer wants to develop a gas station. We don't approve development plans based on whether or not if we have transit there, especially if you want to develop the area. So, but we try to have a balanced eye on it from the transportation perspective, definitely.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, because none of the residents in the area are in favor of this, and the county zoned it BLAS for automotive service. And it seems like there are two competing groups that may not be talking to each other, and that's a little bit of a concern for us because we're open as a community for transit and connectivity opportunities, but we really don't want to have a lot more traffic, especially in an area that already is rife with some traffic issues and turning radius issues. So it would probably be a good thing, in my opinion, to potentially look at how some of these projects are competing with each other.
For
Yeah,
sure.
that's really all I had to say.
Yeah, no, thanks.
I appreciate you.
The one thing I will also say is that the zoning decisions are the one area where the executive office has very little input, and that is pretty much a function of the Baltimore County Council. So I don't know what went into that zoning determination, but your point is well taken in terms of making sure that we're consistent in our approaches with communities. So for sure. And Director Walker, I didn't mean to cut you off. You were going to say something there.
No, sir, Mr. C, it's okay. I wanted to also let them know that we do traffic impact studies whenever there's a development that comes before us. We do request a traffic impact study so that we can understand the impact that it's having on the community and on the roads before that development plan moves forward, so that we can make sure that traffic is still movable and that it's still walkable and bikeable. That is a priority for the Department of Transportation now as well.
Yep. Thank you again.
I got one question messaged to me privately, and I can answer this, but I will tee it up. The question is from Nora, and it says, will the microtransit vehicles be electric or hybrid or regular diesel?
Nora, thank you for the question. We have not gotten that far in terms of what type of vehicles they will be, but I will tell you, with Mr. CE on the call, we have a mandate to look at electric vehicles and be more environmentally sensitive. So we are looking at that as we look at growing our fleet. And we have also gone for some grants to get some electric vehicles in the fleet as we continue to move forward. So we are looking to be environmentally sustainable as we continue to grow the fleet.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question.
Okay, if there are any other attendees that would like to be unmuted, please feel free to let us know in the chat and we will unmute you. But I do believe that we have come to the end of our questions, Director Walker, so I will kick it over to you.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening, and I'd like to thank the team, because none of this could have been done without the team participating and going out and getting all the surveys. This has been a year-long project in terms of making sure that we had all of Baltimore County's feedback, and we appreciate additional feedback. So again, use the Public Works at baltimorecountymd.gov to email us any further comments or questions that you may have. We definitely want to make sure that we touch all areas and all of our stakeholders so that we can have a great plan moving forward. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Mr. CE.
No, I'll echo that and thank everyone again for your time, your presence, your feedback. We truly appreciate it. And we'll be kicking off our budget town hall series in the new year. So stay tuned for that. And we welcome you to continue to talk about transit and all sorts of other investments in Baltimore County in the years ahead. So thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great evening, and we'll see you soon. Take care.